We are live on YouTube, and we will call this meeting of the Reading Board of Education to order at 7:32 p.m. on Thursday, January 14th, 2021, being held remotely pursuant to Executive Order 7B. All members of the board are present. The first item of business, barring any motions at this time, is public comment.
Chris, can we also add, can I make a motion to add something to the agenda?
Sure, go ahead.
So I would like to add to the agenda an update from the Communications Committee about the social media guidelines.
Okay. So to propose to add as item 4, new A on the agenda, social media guidelines?
Yes, please.
I'll second that.
Second from John. So it's motion Colleen, second John. Is there any discussion on the motion to add social media guidelines as a discussion topic? Hearing none, we'll quickly take the roll. Heather?
Yes.
Colleen?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Chris Hocker?
I assume because this is a calendared meeting, it's not
It's a regular meeting. Yep.
Yes. I vote yes.
I vote yes. Motion carries 7-0. That's the new 7A. Math curriculum becomes B. Budget becomes C. Any public comment, please indicate so by raising your hand in the participants window or on the new version of Zoom in the reactions button. Going once, going twice. Seeing no public comment, we'll move on to board member comment. If there is no board member comment, we'll move right on to 4A, which is social media guidelines. I'll turn it over to Colleen, the chair of the Communications Committee, please.
Okay, so we just adjourned a Communications Committee meeting where we made an update to the guidelines to further enhance and react to some posts that we're seeing on our Facebook page. And so, Chris, if you're comfortable and able to post yes, okay, there's our draft. That's the update. What we have added to it is the guideline always included the clause saying vulgarity is not permitted, but we've added some other, we've specified some other elements that to be specific about what is not permitted on the Facebook page or on any of our social media. And then also the blurb at the bottom there in bold saying the account administrators may remove content or comments or content not in compliance with these guidelines. So what we'd like to do is propose that the board adopts these guidelines with the provision that it would be approved by council. If you'll remember, we have to be very careful about having social media, Board of Ed social media pages, and our council was very influential in the development of these guidelines. And so we'd like their approval before we really set it in stone. But for tonight, we'd like to make a motion that the board approve and adopt these guidelines, assuming that council will approve them as well.
So we're looking for a motion to approve the revised social media guidelines as proposed, subject to approval of council.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Parkin.
I'll make that motion.
Motion, Heather, is there a second for the motion?
Colleen.
Colleen, thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? Anybody like to be heard on the topic? Chris?
Yeah. Oh, maybe I cut out there. Why was it felt necessary? I'm assuming that the section that was highlighted in yellow till about 2 seconds ago is an addition to an existing, right?
Right. The present policy or the present guidelines is everything you're seeing plus vulgarity is not permitted. Vulgarity is not permitted has been deleted from this draft and incorporated into the section that says the following is not permitted, vulgarity and the other 4 items.
Okay. And so, but the question still stands is that why was it felt necessary to try to specify? Because, and I'm not against it, I'm just saying that the minute, as we all know, the minute you try to specify something, then that implies that things are okay. Other things are okay. So I'm just wondering what the rationale is.
It's a very good point, Chris. We had a post that incorporated those elements that were added. And so we want to be very thorough in our expectations and spell them out, what's not permitted. And so we wanted to make sure that the guideline reflected that.
The guidelines assumed a certain measure of good faith and did not provide discretion for the administrator to the page to take anything down. And that is a loophole that would be helpful to close, basically.
Yeah, no, I can see that. It's just the 5 bullets or the 4 new bullets, however you want to phrase it. Like I said, I'm not against it. There's always a downside risk to doing things this way, but I'm assuming these things don't take an act of God to change. If
Right.
It turns out that
This is an iterative piece of guidance that this is going to be the 3rd proposed version of it in the 3 years that we've been managing the page. So,
okay.
I would like the community to know that the post that we're talking about was clearly not from someone in our community.
Mike?
Heather and Colleen, how much activity commenting activity goes on? Not you guys, but members of the public.
Not a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not because we have a policy of not responding to it. So people will like it, people will share it, things like that. But the comments are usually innocuous.
Yeah. Usually it's
not
thank
like
you, or I'll see you there, or great job, Mr. Hoffman. Like that's
right.
It's not anything on 401 that gets 128.
You got to get your mother to stop posting.
That would be the only person. Okay, got it.
So any other questions or comments on the motion with respect to the guidelines? If there is not, we'll call the question. Heather?
Yes.
Colleen?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Steph?
Oh, I saw her.
Yes.
Yes. John?
Yes.
Chris Hocker?
Yes.
I vote yes. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
This down. We'll move on to approval of math curriculum resource for K-5, and I'll ask our curriculum committee chair, John, to please take the floor.
Thank you. And my viola player just started practicing in the background just as that happened, but that's great timing. As discussed at our last meeting, our administrative team as well as our math teacher team really went thorough through about 11 vendors and narrowed it down to just one. And we discussed it at length, and we feel confident that we have a vendor that will work well for our K-5 group. So Chris, if you don't mind, if I could share my screen, I'd like to ask we want to recommend Envision, which is a program. It's actually a division of Sarvis Learning Company as our vendor for math textbooks K-5. And I just asked if I could share a screen.
You're all good.
Sorry? Okay,
You could,
thanks. Here's the motion that we would potentially ask for. And Stephanie, was there anything that you wanted to add?
No, my
Okay.
great appreciation for the hard work and leadership of our math specialist, and also to those teacher representatives who gave their time to review materials well above and beyond the typical day. And we look forward to moving forward with this new resource pending board approval.
John, can I suggest that the motion suggest that it be the provider effective July 1, 2021? I don't want to give sense that it's an open end, that it's for next year and beyond implies an absolute obligation to continue past one academic year.
Okay. Okay.
All right, does anybody want to make the motion that John has proposed? Heather, is there a second?
Sure.
Chris, thank you. So motion Heather, second Chris Hocker. Any discussion on the motion? Again, this is the vendor we talked about last week. Hearing none, we'll call the question. Heather,
Yes.
Colleen,
Yep.
Mike,
Yes.
Steph,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Yes.
Chris Hocker.
Yes.
I vote yes. The motion carries 7-0. Thank you. John, if you could take your screen down, thank you. We'll move on to item 4C, 2021-2022 operating and capital budgets. And I want to start by inviting either Dr. Harrison or Mr. Zachary to provide any updates on any technical changes or any updates in the past week with respect to any of the line items before we sort of jump in any further. Is there anything to report?
I didn't have any technical updates or any updates at this time, and I'll defer to Clarence.
Mr. Chairman, we haven't had any changes. I will let you know. One of your colleagues discovered an error in one of the reports. It's a calc error on the itemized object detail report. The percentage change column subtotals were summing the numbers above them instead of doing the percent. So we've let Cognos know. I can send you an updated one. I had to go manually change it until they change it. But the bottom line, the last page, the percentage is correct, but the subtotals of the various columns, they were summing the numbers above. So it, like the original yours shows like a 90% change in salaries when it's 4.38%. So that's just they had error in their report, so they're going to get that corrected. As I think I told you about the first week or so, we're going to find the little kinks in the system we got to work through.
Yep, it's a process. All right. So I want to next turn to the question of enrollment in both buildings. And if you recall, I had asked Natalie and Phyllis to give us a sense of enrollment projections, and this sort of COVID specific question of who all is out there lurking that might have withdrawn for COVID reasons, but might be a potential enrollee again after the pandemic is over. And both Natalie and Phyllis were good enough to provide that information, and I'm sharing the data that I received from RES, and I'd ask Natalie to kind of walk us through it if she can.
Sure thing. So 4 boxes will start in the upper left-hand corner. That is our current enrollment, the number of sections we have in each grade level, pre-K through 4. You'll see the enrollment in the first white column, and then the current number of classes at that grade level, and then how they are spread out amongst the classes. You'll notice in grade 3 currently, we have 1 class with 17 and 1 with 19.
Natalie, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Chris, do you mind making it just a bit larger?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Good. And all night, if that's a problem, somebody yell at me. That's.
And I guess I was cheating because I have a cheat sheet in front of me. So thanks, Rido. You'll notice in 3rd grade, the discrepancy, there's 1 class with 17, the others have 18 and 19. That I would say is the grade level that we've seen the most movement throughout the year of individuals moving out, whether out of town, out of state, and also individuals moving in. I say it all the time, and I'll continue saying it. Our enrollment is constantly changing this year. This is my 4th year. I have never seen the movement that we're seeing in our building this year. The rectangle below is based on the Prouda projections. And I ask you to take a look at 3rd grade. So based on our incoming kindergarten through 4th. Our 3rd grade, currently our 2nd grade, you'll see is one of our smaller grade levels. I want us to think long and hard with how we went about this process last year. I promise you, Joe promises you, we know our students, we know our needs. And so I have in the budget for this year, along with Joe and our team, we are looking to have 5 3rd grade classes. As we know, for next year, as we know, the jump from 2nd to 3rd is huge. We have also had for everyone a year unlike any other. And I want to really work hard together with you this year to make sure our class sizes are small. So if we take a look at next year's third grade, if you were to take a section away, we would be right out of the gate at 19 and 20. And then if you look over at the withdrawal chart just to the right of that, you'll notice our current second graders, we have 3 who have opted for private school. So if we just added those in and no one else, we would already be at 20 and 21 children. That was the situation we were in when at the 11th hour in August, we were asked to bring on a 5th teacher. I am forever grateful for that, but it was 72 hours of our lives that was unbelievably chaotic. So I'm hopeful that we can agree upon taking a look at those 5 sections and allowing our children next year, I think more than ever. I always believe in small class sizes, but more than ever next year as we transition, hopefully back to a sense of normal, that we really can meet the children where they're at in these smaller settings. On the right-hand side, we have broken down, and I'm going to explain it because the number 104 looks really wonky, right? So when we look at the new to district and then the withdrawn, 104 includes the 68 new kindergartners who have joined us. Now, case in point, Chris, I sent you a chart yesterday. That number was 103. Just today, we had another kindergartner start. So that's what I'm talking about in terms of our movement and our numbers changing literally on a daily basis. So that includes 68 kindergartners who joined our family at Reading Elementary School. Now, you're saying, but wait a minute, Natalie, there's 93 in kindergarten. That is correct, because we had our group move up from our Reading Elementary School preschool, our pre-K program as well. So they joined in to create that, what we have now, 93. We also had 36 other students join us this year in grades 1 through 4. So that's what makes up that number 104. And then you'll take a look at the withdrawn. So we broke it down by school so you could see homeschool, private school, out of district, out of state. And then the chart below it breaks it down even further with those same 4 categories, but by grade level. So that hopefully you'll be able to see, as Chris says, the potential children who we hope will come back and join us, whether they have chosen for homeschool this year, given the COVID circumstances, or whether they have gone to a private school, given the scenario. Again, having that wiggle room and that understanding of those friends, we hope will come back and join us. And then you'll see also the out of district and the out of state friends across the board there.
Thank you, Natalie. Why don't we stop here for questions about the RES enrollment report? Mike?
What's out of district and out of state, Natalie?
Out of district, so moving from Reading Elementary down to Westport, or to Fairfield, or to Hebron, or to Glastonbury.
So permanently gone.
I'm sorry?
Permanently gone.
They've sold their home and they've bought a new home or new land or a building or been transferred for work. Yeah. And out of state similarly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the potential as far as the enrollment ups and downs is within the homeschool, private school question, as folks made decisions when we reopened to say, I want to go to a school that has 5 days and things like that. And whether that becomes a long-term solution or not, we don't know.
Mr. Chairman, just let you know, I got notification of a request of a family that I know wanted John Reed and wanted Reading Elementary, who the family will be moving in February. And they're looking to see if they can continue remotely to the end of the year. So to Natalie's point, these things are going on a daily basis.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments on the RES numbers that we're looking at?
I don't know if this is jumping the gun, Natalie. This is Colleen. Are you saying, I think I'm interpreting this correctly, you're suggesting 5 sections for all of your grades?
That's correct. That's what I have in my proposed budget.
Okay.
That is correct.
If there are no other questions or comments, we'll switch over to John Reed. And Phyllis, if you could walk us through this report, please.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm happy to do that. It's a bit more simple. I think it's fair to say we've seen a little less movement. I don't know if it's an age-related thing. I mean, that remains to be seen. Our enrollment this year, and while we get changes almost on a daily basis, so for example, the 333 current enrollment that we see on January 12th, well, we had one student leave, in 6th grade, but we had another one added in 7th. So, it just in 2 days, but we're pretty much at that 333 total enrollment at this point. We have the movement you see and the new enrollments and withdrawals. Once again, it's relatively stable. And we haven't seen, we didn't break down exactly whether, by state or district, but I happen to know many of them are local to other districts like Wilton and so forth, just from talking to Lori Clement, who gathers this data for us. But, for us, it's a little bit different. I want to just clarify. So if we divide our total enrollment, let's say, for example, in grade 6 and 7, we come up with 4 classes. But I want to remind the board that, last year the board approved what we ended up calling our +1 classes so that we could retain our team structure. We're asking for the same for our incoming grade 5. We're getting a much larger class. So we are graduating, in 8th grade at around 100, we're gaining a grade next year that will be around the same, and that is why we're asking for an additional person at our grade 5 level next year, so that just to again remind the board that our teachers do not just teach one section. Our ELA and our math teachers teach 1.5 sections per se, so that additional person would enable would probably split, would probably do maybe one, ELA and math, but we would keep our class sizes, and we would most importantly retain our team structure at the other grade levels. So we're staying stable. I didn't include Prouted there. We're a little bit above Prouted, for example, projected for 2021, 319 students. And doesn't even approach what we have now by 2023. And of course, Prouted was an upward trend, but we are slightly outpacing what Prouted projected, but we're remaining so far relatively stable at 333.
Thank you, Phyllis. Any questions or comments on the John Reed numbers?
It's Colleen.
Yes.
I understand everything that's on the screen here. The level of the level of detail I'm looking for, I guess, is how my daughter's in 5th grade, so I'm very clear on how the team structure works this year. I'm wondering if there is a graphical representation or a schedule you could show us for how the additional 5th grade teacher, how that would help maintain the team. It seems like they'd be split. But if there's a way for me to help me understand how that 5th grade teacher, how their schedule would work.
Yeah, we could provide that for you. If we keep this the core teachers departmentalized as they currently are, we wouldn't be able to. The new person would have to take on probably 2 assignments, perhaps, and which would be math and ILA, perhaps, to support. Because again, it's like a 1.5 sections per day that they teach. But let me put something together for you, and then we can definitely share that with the board as soon as possible.
Thank you.
All right. If there are no other questions on this, I'm going to take the share down. All right. And now want to get into sort of the core of the process here of how we're going to work through the budget book, which continues to be sort of a work in progress until all the kinks are worked out and we have the whole proposal. But what I thought would be helpful for tonight is to do our best to work through the major issues and identify the areas for which it would be helpful to have additional information from the administration when we get back together on February 2nd. So those sort of large rock issues of, like what Colleen was saying, show me what a 5th grade teacher is going to do for you. And so what I'm going to start with is by pulling up Dr. Harrison's presentation and sort of some of the new or reinstatement items, and ask the administration to kind of put a little bit of color behind each of those so we have a little bit of a sense of where those are coming from. And as we work through that, if that generates any questions or related topics, I'm happy to entertain those. The goal being to come out of here tonight with a list of the major issues that require additional work before regrouping in February and working through things a little bit more at a granular level. So with that, I'll put Dr. Harrison's slides back up. And I note that here, the first request is a grade 1 teacher. Am I understanding that to be the grade 3 teacher, Natalie?
So the way Rydell broke that down, so right now we have 5 first grade teachers and 4 second grade teachers. So really so that this current second grade teacher moved down to second. So I would have that opportunity for that individual to move back up to second, if that is that individual's wish, which would leave that opening in first grade. Does that make sense? Because right now we already have 5 third grades.
The moral of the story is we need one more teacher.
That's
and
right. That's
it
right.
results in 5 sections across the board.
Right.
Whatever we're calling it on this slide is sort of irrelevant. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah, Chris, the concept is the current teacher would move up to the grade we need, which would create the vacancy at the first grade. That's why we're saying replacement for first grade teacher.
Right, but as a practical matter, it's not as if that cohort is adding a section. I think that's where there's a little bit of, when I read that, it looks like we're adding a section of the cohort moving into first grade, which
No.
doesn't make as much sense as what we've heard before. Okay. Is everybody clear on that request based on the comments tonight so far? Why don't we talk for a minute about the PE teacher, then the point
I'm sorry,
4.
I'm sorry, Chris, I just have one
go ahead.
thing. I just, I think we might have talked about this last time, but if we can just see the fully loaded number at some point, so that I think that number is low, right? The top of the slide says salaries and benefits, and I think 52 is low. So if we can move towards a point to where we're talking fully loaded numbers, that would be great.
Yes, the benefit numbers are in the benefit. It's not shown on the Dr. Harrison slide, but we can add that for visual purposes.
Okay, great, thanks.
And I agree with that.
Right. I think one of our key topics we're going to have to settle upon in the beginning of February is where we're landing on an allocation for health insurance after we have the tri-board conversation with the consultant about their recommendations for next year. All right. Who would like to speak about the PE teacher and the sort of scheduling needs associated therewith?
Yeah, I can speak to all of these. So for several years, as those of you who we've been together through this process, we have put this on for the past couple of years. When I first arrived, we were a 2.0. We had been a 2.0 school, 2.0 PE teachers. It was then reduced to 1.6. As I think we are all seeing, the enrollment is definitely moving back up. Currently, our 1.0 physical education teacher has taken on more classes than her other fine and practical arts counterparts because we truly need 2 PE teachers. So if you imagine our building, we have 1 full-time art teacher, we have 1 full-time music teacher, we have 1 full-time library media specialist, and then for 3rd and 4th, we have the 1 full-time instrumental music. If you think about PE we do 2 times a week. There are 2 separate opportunities for every child in that building to have physical education. 1.6 does not make sense when all the other fine and practical arts have 1 full teacher. And because there's opportunity twice a week for the physical education, we are requesting to have 2.0, so 2 full-time teachers. Right now we're at 1.6, and we're looking to move our 0.6 up to 1.0 for next year to support equality among the job obligations in the fine and practical arts team.
And there would not be a benefits piece to this because that person's already over half-time and already eligible?
That is a Vicky.
That is correct.
Specific, okay, Clarence, yep.
Right, so that is the loaded cost effectively because we're already baking that into the current operating budget.
Correct.
This is Colleen, would we, I think it's okay for me to ask this question. Is our existing staff cool with this? Like they are available and we don't have to find a point for
Correct.
person, right?
Correct. We have two unbelievable people on that team, and I am looking to have them continue working together, both at 1.0.
Okay, thanks.
It's an increase of a 0.6 to a 0.4 of the incumbent, basically. All right. The recess supervisor, which I believe is one of the last things we cut in the spring.
That's correct. And I'm even thinking summertime. This was one of the things that we were, that was taken away. And I know those of you who have known me for these past several years, safety is paramount. And we have little youngsters running around a massively sized playground. Those of you who are there and play with your kids, you know, it's an enormous space. And just that sense of safety and security for all of our children, we need to get that other person that we used to have out there back in to ensure that safety and that well-being for our children while they're playing outside. So this, again, as it says in the comment, reinstating, we're not asking for more than we've had in the past. We're asking to get back what we had in the past for that the recess opportunity.
So what's a 0.5 recess supervisor as opposed to a 1.0 recess supervisor?
I'm imagining because of the hours in the day, it's a 3-hour-a-day position. Clarence, is that why it's listed as 0.5?
Yes, it's additional hours. We've added, it's additional hours to Natalie's point. I think she's right. It's like just under 4 hours, 3.5, 3.75. So that's how it's been calculated.
Right. So they're all halftime roles then. It's not
Correct.
like we have three full.
None have benefits.
Right.
That's
Right.
None have benefits.
Right. But okay. So when we say it's 0.5, it's not like it's a typical recess supervisor works 4 hours. We want to hire one who works 2 hours. We just want to hire a recess supervisor.
Yes.
Correct.
Any questions or clarifications on that request? All right. The half-hour increase to cafeteria aides.
So we have found this necessity, especially this year more than ever. In the I say the old days, in the old days of 10 months ago, we had our lunches literally back to back. With no opportunity in between for the cleaning and sanitizing. And I think and now we have a longer period of time. So we're looking to have a period of time that we can make sure that the area is cleaned appropriately, which we're doing right now. But we've also restructured our schedule. Joe was masterful in ensuring that we would have different cohorts. So it's not all second grade eating together in full when we're all in. There are different cohorts that eat at different times to ensure that children can be socially distanced and safe. Now, this is not just assuming that we're going to need to follow that same protocol next year, but this is also ensuring that we can have a clear transition in between the two. Right now, not right now, again, the old days, they were back to back with no in-between time to have that proper cleaning. So we would like to have just a half-hour increase for our aides in there, so that there can be proper transition and cleaning before the next group comes in.
Any questions or comments on that request? Okay. Custodian, Natalie.
Okay, so as you are all aware, this past year, we transitioned and did sort of a name change and a body change of the positions that we had as of last year. So as of last year, we had a daytime custodian at Reading Elementary School. We also had a head custodian straddling between John Reed and Reading Elementary, taking care of the mechanicals and the issues that might come up and really assessing things and really leading the pack of our custodial team. That position was adjusted, and I don't want to misspeak, but my understanding that position was adjusted. So now both John Reed and Reading Elementary have one person. So there's not the person straddling the two schools. There's now one person taking care of those same duties that the head custodian took care of, while also taking care of the oopsies that happen during a regular day in an elementary and a middle school. So speaking for Reading Elementary, we have that one person. And what we did this year is we adjusted one of our custodians' schedules so that he could be there during the school day. And we are finding absolutely imperative. We just found that for our head custodian to do the cafeteria, the prepping of the building in the morning, and we have a flood in this bathroom, and a child got sick in this bathroom, with a building of our size is quite frankly near impossible. So what we did was we ran, there's sort of this diagnostic program with Hilliard, who we use for some of our materials. And what they're really asking, and Joe, please jump in if I'm incorrect with this exact number, or Bobby, I know you're here today too. I think it said we need 9 custodians. Okay, so that's a little, I mean, that's lots of human beings. And right now, as you may be aware, we have the 1 daytime custodian, then we have a night crew of 4. The building is huge. And I think more importantly, during the day, making sure that we're able to take care of a building of the age that it is, but also making sure that we're taking care of the needs of the kids, the transition of cafeteria, the issues that might arise outside, the boiler, a leak, a bathroom that's clogged. So we're looking to add that 1. We're not asking for 9. Based on the recommendation that was given by through this diagnostic that we did, but we're looking to add a person so we could have that support during the school day while the children are there.
Any questions about the custodial requests?
Of course, it's Colleen. Hey, so I, fully support everything you just said there, Natalie. I don't know how they do it. But I'm also remembering that we discussed at some point, time is blending together for me, but a shift to a lawn maintenance crew.
Correct.
And I remember as part of that discussion, we explained how it was going to free up availability. I believe, I don't know if we just differentiate between custodian and maintenance, but it was going to free up a staff member so that they could focus on other types of activities needed in the building. And so I'm just wondering how that sort of factors in to what you just explained to us.
No, that's an excellent question. And yes, to a certain extent, but keeping in mind, yes, it frees up, but essentially we have my head custodian right now doing, I don't want to say the job of 2 because that's unfair to say, but the head custodian that we had going back and forth between John Reed and Reading Elementary School, that position is no longer in existence. So that individual's responsibilities for the well-being and maintenance of the daily maintenance of the building is now also the person who used to do the lawn maintenance. So does that make sense? So yes, that's not a role anymore, but there's also a massive amount of other duties and responsibilities that were added to what the old daytime custodian did not do. Again, our new head custodian is doing what the day custodian did before, as well as what the head custodian did during his time at RES.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Taking it from go ahead, Chris.
Oh, yeah. It's probably impossible to break this down, but particularly in the case of the cafeteria aides, but also potentially the custodian. How much of the need is driven by COVID?
With the change, so again, great question. I don't think much, if any at all. The cafeteria, quite frankly, again, with it being back to back before, there needs to be a sense of organization rather than chaos, especially in our little elementary school. So that what we're really doing is adding 5 minutes between the lunches to create that extra half hour so we can have that transition time to meet the needs of all the children eating lunch in there. So really, when you look at it that way, it's 1/2 hour a day. It's 30 minutes. So we're just adding that 5 minutes for that transition and that cleanup. So I think even sans COVID, I think we would think through this and just make our organization and our routines just smoother.
So this would be your ask if there were no COVID.
Yeah, because what we're seeing, we have even more time in between now. I think we have 10 to 15 minutes in between them now because that's necessary. We're looking to do 5 minutes in between. And like I said, Joe has restructured the entire schedule for this year. So this year just looks different than it would on a typical, quote, normal year. And in terms of the custodian, I have thought since the day I started there, how does one person manage a building of that size? And I know many of you, actually, I think all of you have been on a tour of the building. It is a massively sized building. And to get into, and I would love to do a day in the life of our head custodian now. He is amazing. I am constantly thanking him and bowing to him for the work he's doing, but it's becoming near impossible. Again, if you think of a preschool, we have a little accident in the preschool classroom, and then we go to the other end of second grade because there are paper towels stuffed in a toilet that's now overflowing, but lunch is going on. So we need the lunch cleaned up because he is also there to help empty the garbages and clean up lunch while the kids are in session. So it's just gotten to the building is massive. We have almost 500 kids in the building, and for one person to manage all that while we have 500 kids in session is, I just think, incredibly, incredibly challenging. So this would add that ability to, this person would be that person who could help support so that he can do the maintenance things that need to be done. And probably TMI for you guys, but example, the past week and a half maybe, he has been working on the bathroom in the main office that only the office staff is using right now. And there was a leak. And it turned into a week and a half job, but it turned into a week and a half job of having not a toilet in there because he's managing the other parts of the building and making sure to get kids back in our hybrid session this past Monday. So again, I think if we had that other person in there who could help to manage the building so that he can deal with some of these maintenance things that, again, in a building our age, I think are just bound to happen.
Mike?
Chris, do you know the status of the facilities manager position that has been discussed at the town level?
I understand that the town has a part-time facilities manager now, and there's discussion about converting that into a full-time role. However, the barriers here are with respect to the head custodian having a reporting relationship through the school board and through the building administration, and the facilities director not, and having a, I don't want to say friction, but there wouldn't be in a position where we could assign the facilities director work within the schools without creating a bargaining problem. So the facilities director for the town can help from an oversight perspective to help A, walk the buildings and say, here's where we think long-term needs are, and B, be a first point of phone call for our head custodians of both buildings to say, I've got a leak, can you help, or who can help? Or really, it's who can help. And to the extent that the town and the schools can be on the same page with respect to vendors and things, there's an efficiency gain from that.
Yeah, I was just wondering if, I mean, I know that both buildings are a little long in the tooth, and they have challenges, and I was just wondering if the town facilities manager could pull some of those infrastructure issues that pull away from the regular custodial duties. For example, the main office toilet. Somebody that he could call to say, hey, I've got an issue with a toilet here that's out of my league or beyond what I can handle with the regular work. Can you do it?
And I will say, I'm sorry to jump in, I will say he attempted to remedy it to save money because we didn't want to have to call out. And he thought, this is something I'm capable of doing because I have this background and this ability. It became beyond that. So we did have to call in a person to come fix it. But it's things like that Joe and I are good at other things, but we don't know how to fix leaking toilets.
Yeah. I wasn't trying to speak about talent. I'm sure he's very talented. I didn't mean to make it,
Oh, no. I don't think you did at all. I was just saying for this particular situation, yes, we do have our vendors and our people who do come in and support the needs in the building.
Yeah, I believe you that there's enough work during the day that, one person must be very busy. I think it's hard to make a decision on the one custodian without taking a look at the whole group. I think I got a good feeling for how you've got yours laid out there, Natalie. You know, 1 in the daytime, 4 at night. I don't recall what the setup is over at JRMS. Does anybody else? Is it 1 and 4 as well?
No, we have 1 during the day and 3 in the evening.
Okay. Thank you, darling.
And I assume that the 4 in the evening at RES are necessary to handle the regular daily turnover of the building every night. It's not like we could shift one of those to the day and still get the evening work done.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And similarly, on the topic of the 2 buildings custodial needs, Darlene and Phyllis, have you experienced any sort of stress points with respect to custodial staff with the change this year?
Well, one of the things we're grateful for is we are sharing a custodian for part of our lunch periods with RES, and he's been invaluable. You know, particularly when as we look to next week and having all the students in, we'll be back to using 2 locations for lunches, and to get them cleaned up, you know, in between is very difficult for one person. So that's been a real big help. You know, COVID has put that I would say that's the main pressure they put on us, but we're frankly quite blessed with the staff we have. They are dedicated, they're talented, and we're just in a really good place. We're very, very pleased with how our building looks and how it's being maintained on a daily basis.
Can you help me understand that lunch thing? You said you're borrowing somebody during the day?
Well, I should say sharing, borrowing, sharing. He originally, I think, was full-time with you, Natalie, and part-time with you as well. That's what it was. And then
he came in to help support the COVID need with the extra cleanings that we had in our reopening plan.
Right. So he comes to us, I guess it's like 3 hours a day. And then I think it's staggered. I don't know the exact hours, but he's always there for our lunch times, and he's terrific, frankly. Yeah.
And so this individual is not counted in the 1 and 4 and the 1 and 3.
He's not counted in our 1 and 3. No.
He is counted in my 1 and 4. And what we did this year, again, I'm talking COVID language now. Mm-hmm. What we did this year is we moved one of our night people so he could support during the day, again, because we have in our reopening plan, and we felt strongly that we needed the multiple cleanings throughout the day. So we have one of the night individuals comes in earlier to support our head custodian, spraying the doorknobs, cleaning the common areas during the school day. And then this individual that Phyllis is talking about is that kind of like that part-time to help support now our 3 night people. Does that make sense? So I shifted one of my night people to the day. Mm-hmm. And so that left 3 night people. And this individual she's referencing comes for a couple hours in the afternoon to get a part of that job done to lessen the load on the night people. So It's really kind of 4 people. So the way we're moving it around.
So that part-time person we're talking about is in addition to the 1 and 4.
Yes and no, because we have that part-time individual in there. So that's kind of that would be kind of that person, that position, if you will. But it would be a full position versus that individual it would be that individual coming just to me, for example, rather than splitting the time between Phyllis and me.
I'm just trying to understand exactly what the difference in personnel is between right now and what the proposal is. And if there's an additional person on for COVID reasons only, I assume that would be withdrawn after COVID, and we'd just be talking about how to handle things practically.
Maybe, but I know for sure if we are not given another person, then we would absolutely look to continue with what we're doing now, and that's having a night individual be there during part of the day so that the head custodian's job is more manageable while that other individual's there. And that, similar to Darlene, and given our building size, then we would have 3 people at night without the support of this part-time person that Phyllis and I are sharing right now to help get one of the areas. They do area cleaning. So the building is divided into a set number of areas. And this individual that Phyllis has first and I have second helps begin one of the areas so that when the night crew comes in, off they go, they can finish up their areas by that 11 o'clock time.
So right now, RES is supported by 5 custodians and John Reed is supported by 4, plus the addition of this one other person who kind of flexes between the two.
I don't think so.
No, that's
Okay,
true.
so we have the head custodian, and then I have the 4 night crew. So yes, but the 4 night crew is now 3 night crew because I have one of them working during the day.
But it's 5 individuals.
Correct.
Plus now this other floating person is 6
And
individuals.
he just comes for a couple hours in the afternoon. Yep.
Right. And then on Phyllis's side, it's 1 and 3 is 4, plus this floating person is a 5th person. So between the 2 buildings, there are 10 individuals altogether.
Mr. Chairman, you hold on so I can give you an exact count.
Sure.
And my apologies while Clarence looks that up. So would this additional 1 FTE potentially be the person who's floating, or is that would be in addition to, and they would continue to float? Sorry, I'm not clear on that.
That's a hiring decision, so I don't know that I would be able to make that distinction right now. But I know Phyllis and I are very, very happy and pleased with this individual.
I think I just want to chime in with that to second that motion. Just for an example, the rapport he already has with our head custodian, Mr. Seifert, we were able to purchase a much larger television screen for our cafeteria. I just happened to be there when they were chit-chatting, and sure enough, he came in a little bit early just to help Stephen to install it. And that would be, for when the weather's really bad, we want to be able to show a video for our students. And just those little kinds of things. It really is the individual is so powerful.
Yep.
And we certainly don't want to lose him. He's really wonderful. Yeah.
Agree.
Mr. Chairman, at John Reed, we currently have 3 regular custodians plus 1 head custodian for a total of 4. At Reading Elementary, we currently have, it looks like 4 regular custodians. Hold up, nope, let me count here. There are 4 regular custodians and 1 head custodian, plus the new additional. And I think one of those is the ones that they're talking about that splits between the 2 buildings.
Yep. Right, okay, so this floater is on top of the 5 at RES and the 4 at John Reed.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yep.
Okay. But you're looking for 1 additional. So what happens? So what happens to the floater if you get the 1 additional?
Well, I think we're looking to, and again, that's why I can't speak specific personnel, but we would look to, instead of having that position be a 3 or 4 hour position in my building, I would look to have that individual be a full-time, but that individual, and Clarence, do you have information in your massive amounts of information that you have? No, this was something that happened in the fall. This was a decision that this was not this was part of our plans to reopen and have what we needed within the building. And I don't know the behind the scenes work that went on with Vicky, with you.
It predates me. I can get the information. I don't have it right now because I came late November, so I think that happened before. But the best way to look at it for RES, even though on the books they're currently showing these 5, it's in actuality it's working out as 4.5 because half the time that one of those gentlemen is over at John Reed. So on the books it's showing 5, but in actuality how it's performing it's 4.5, and the other 0.5 is helping out over at John Reed.
Okay.
4.5 regular plus the head.
Well, that includes I'm just doing total.
That includes the head. That's a different answer.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I don't know which is right and which is wrong. I'm just saying that it sounds to me like you've got half a person who is in fact the same person. Counted at both schools with 2 halves making a whole, so that the number is 9, not 10.
Correct.
Okay.
I was convinced it was 10 3 minutes ago.
Me too.
Well, as I put it this way, as I do I do the sum total, including the new position, let's see, I'm showing 4 at John Reed, and I'm showing 6 at Reading, including new positions. So 6 minus 1 gives you the 5, but out of that 5, one of those gentlemen split in reality, so that's how you get to the 4.5. So you have 5 and 4 in reality, and she's asking for 1 more. If I can share my screen, I can show it to you.
Yeah, let me give you. All right, you should be all set. Well, I gotta take mine down.
Yes. Let's see here. Which one is it? ER9. Here we go. Can you all see that?
Yep.
So I will hide all this other stuff that's not pertinent. These are the custodians. You'll see this new one here, and I'll blow it up so make it a little bit easier to see. Is that better? So you've got the 3 custodians plus a head at John Reed. Then you've got this new position. Then you've got existing. Remember, one of these, I don't know which person it is in reality splitting their time.
No, none of those. The person who's splitting their time is not on there.
Okay.
The person who's splitting their time is kind of that new person, but I'm not hogging them. I'm sharing them with Phyllis and Darlene, if you will.
So where
wait,
where does that new person live in the current budget?
Yeah.
Where's that hitting our salary and things?
Yeah.
This is the list I have from Vicky in regards to the staff. So I don't know who the new person that person is that's splitting the time. My assumption was one of these individuals.
Is he working for free?
I hope so.
He's not. And again, Vicky can
It's real. It's real.
answer this better, but he basically came in to sub, to help out.
Yeah.
Oh, he's a sub. He's one of our custodial subs. Is that what you're saying?
Right now, that's my understanding, right? And then as we saw this transforming, we're like, we need another body in this massively sized building. So this individual's name is not on this list anywhere because he's not
full time.
So,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Not
this goes back to me being new. I think they did for COVID purposes. They hired one of their existing subs to come in to fill in. They realized the benefit of having this extra body on, and now they're trying to bring him on. Not him per se, but a person to fill in that role.
Right, it's a long-term sub situation, right?
Yes, which they like to make permanent. Now I'm understanding the.
Well, but wait a second. I mean, the mission here is to isolate the areas that need further explication. I think we've just found one because in order to compare the current with the next year, we really need to, and the reason is because the salary increase shown on the on Rydell's slide was almost $40,000, and that's unloaded. So we're talking, some significant number there. It's not, pocket change.
Right, and the question is whether you're comparing it as against zero or as against what we're
Exactly.
paying right now.
Exactly. And I don't know what the right answer is. I'm just saying between now and the second, we should figure it out.
I think what we can do is we can find out what we're paying the individuals as a sub, and you'd have to net that out because that expense, to Chris's point, we are paying them as a sub. They're not probably getting benefits, but there is a cost for the sub. You have to net that out, which will reduce that amount of the increase.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And to understand and load it, yeah. And to understand the proposal fully,
Right.
this is to create a head custodian and a regular day custodian at RES. Would this position continue to support John Reed also in this floating capacity, or would they be strictly dedicated to RES?
Our request is that we have another body to support our building size. However, if the board said the only way we're going to do this is to continue sharing, I would be glad to keep this strong individual within our 2 buildings. So is that a fair way of putting?
Yeah, and we
Phyllis,
should
I'm
understand
playing
what the
nice.
cost difference is.
I'm playing nice in the sandbox with Phyllis.
And I'm very pleased to hear that. I think it's very important just to point out that we normally could be fine with 1 day custodian if with 1 lunchroom, right? But we have 2 lunchrooms now because of COVID. And that's why we need the extra body during the day at the lunch periods to help clean up the tables and sanitize them before the next crowd comes in. That's been helpful. And if we don't need to do that next year, we don't necessarily need that additional help. And that's to me, of course, he does other things, but that is the reason why we've been able to get through the 2 lunch rooms and getting them clean in between shifts.
And
One person can't. We have teachers doing it, and we do it sometimes, but it's
Right.
it's a mad rush.
And I have a little answer to, I think, Chris Hocker, you asked in terms of the financials. We're currently paying $15 an hour for substituting and $19 an hour for hired is kind of the, again, I'm not Vicky, I'm not Clarence, but that's what we have in our books right now for.
Yeah, no, and again, we don't have to take all night to answer this question because we're just asking that it be clear, I think.
And to be clear, the thought here is that we'd have 2 custodians at RES, 1 at John Reed, and in a world where John Reed continues to need excess lunchroom space for virus-related reasons for the indefinite future, then John Reed would hope to have either access to this person or would be looking to hire a substitute to help support that need, basically.
That's accurate.
Okay. Any other questions on the custodial request at this point? All right, why don't we switch over to John Reed and talk about the music teacher then?
Thank you. So the 0.5 music teacher that we requested last year is to reinstate an additional person to oversee the program. From my point of reference, coming from my most previous position in New York, I had a similarly sized school with one less grade, and we had 2 full-time people, and we did not have a strings program. So it still boggles my mind that we have Dave Ebert, who is one of the most mild-mannered, middle school friendly persons I've ever met. He stays calm, but he is our music program, and it's not enough. It's not that Dave's not enough. It's just not enough. We currently have students who are not getting general music. In my mind, that's a travesty. We need to expose our children to the arts. It's not all about STEM, and we really, really are suffering in this area. So we desperately needed a 0.5 music teacher to round out our program and to ensure that all of our students, if they're not in a performing arts program, they will at least get general music and be exposed to this very, very important area. And that's why we're asking to reinstate and have a 0.5 person. Preferably we'll find somebody who has a specialty in strings and can also teach some general music. And that's my advocacy, and that's why we're asking for that 0.5.
Heather?
Yeah, this would be a new hire. Somebody new, totally new to the, okay. My other question is in my time on this board, we have seen this position drop and drop and drop. So you're asking for the 0.5 because we had already dropped that down to a 0.5 from a full, when my son first started at John Reed, there were 3 music teachers. So should this be a full-time teacher?
Ideally, we could use it. And we certainly would be able to use a full-time teacher. Yes. I mean, Darlene can speak more accurately because she literally does the schedule. Darlene, do you want to chime in on that?
Right now, in order to make this work, there is very few general music classes. There are also 7th and 8th grade are combined for chorus, band, and strings, which is not ideal. They're not getting the attention that I would like for them to get. So yes, a full-time teacher would help because it's not just the general music. It's separating those out a little more and making sure that the students could get the music education.
And quite frankly, we'd do much better on the market if we, advertised for a 1.0 position. Of course we would.
And there are, remind me, if somebody knows, in Easton, I believe they have 2.5 music teachers. Is that right?
I don't know.
Give me a moment, I can look it up.
Okay.
Easton has two middle school teachers, two music teachers at the middle school level.
We're currently 1.0 or 1.5.
1.0.
That's it.
And Easton only has 6, 7, and 8 at Keller.
That's right.
And they have, yes, that's correct. I would like to poach that jazz band teacher they have over there. I've had my eye on him for years. He's great.
So as a former music teacher, I just want to weigh in here and just say, just say a word of support for what Phyllis is talking about, and just recognizing that if you really want to build a strong music program and think about the sustainability of it, and really for students to have some meaningful experiences, you do really want to make sure that the staffing is there. And I think while there are great music teachers who can do all of the pieces, when you can hire someone who has some specific area of expertise, it is the best way to give the students the most meaningful program. And I also just want to go on record and say that we will not be poaching our sister district. Thank you, Ms. Wade.
You're off the hiring committee.
So we do have a strong music program at RES and at Barlow. And I do know from experience that most of the kids that were going into things like jazz band at Barlow were coming out of Easton. And I personally, I would prefer to do a full position in music, because I did see how badly this was cut. And even when we went to 2, it wasn't ideal. And also, you bring up a very good point about hiring someone great. And when we finally get our kids back in the building, music is going to be something that they're really going to look forward to. And so if we could find someone just so awesome and enthusiastic, and I think it would do a lot to boost school spirit and community and enjoyment, as well as all the other obvious benefits that you get from music education. So if we could figure out how to make that a full-time, I'm just putting my 2 cents in right now. And if we had to cut something else.
Was there, this is Colleen, was there a reason why you didn't ask for the full-time? Are you afraid of us, or is there?
Well, last year we asked for 0.5 and it was one of the first things that got cut. And so we figured but you're right. We should have asked for what we needed. And what we need is, you're right, a full-time music teacher, an additional.
Okay, but I also understand I have enough self-awareness to realize the environment we create. So as long as that's the reason, and that's why you didn't ask.
Yeah, pragmatically, we absolutely would like it's almost, when I came in, I was sort of instructed, well, it's not a full program because you only have one teacher.
Right. And I don't think that you were here when we cut that second teacher 2.5 was before you came here. So
yep.
I will share that when I asked Phyllis, is this what you need? She was very clear, no, we need more. But when we asked for the same thing last year, it was the first thing to go. And I said, well, okay, then I can understand why you're not going back to that, going down that path again.
I think
Kids being at the top of the list. So
I think last year it was a COVID thing also, because we were like, are they even going to be in the school for their music classes? If I recall correctly.
Sure.
But I think we approved the budget before we even got to COVID time. I think we were weighing against increases in special ed primarily last year.
That's correct. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the music teacher? I think we understand the request.
I'm just going to put my calendar that my board actually encouraged me to double my ask. So
So you're asking for 2 new 5th grade teachers, is that right?
No, we're not going to be wasteful. I would like to move on to grade 5, if I may.
Yep,
I'm going to keep it
please.
I'm going to keep it very simple. If we did think of it as just dividing our students by the numbers, we are getting an increased number, an extra section of students, and we need an extra teacher. And partly the way it breaks down is that these are elementary students, regardless of the fact that they're in the middle school, and they require their time on task for ILA, for language arts, and for mathematics. It's greater. Their need is greater. So we can't do that in 40 minutes. So that teachers, anyone who's teaching ILA or math, needs to see the students at least 1.5 times per day. That's how it averages out. And so our teachers just can't teach that many periods in a day. So currently we have, for example, Liz from CUNIS is teaching ILA. She's teaching it 1.5 times per day. There's not enough of her to go around to cover, to keep our class sizes where they currently are, and because we're having an influx of students greater, one section greater than we currently have. It simply is that. It's an increase in numbers. And so with this additional hire, it wouldn't play out as cleanly. And Colleen, I appreciate your request. We will get you a visual to show that. So that we're not, and it depends on how it's going to play out, but the person would take on more than one thing. So this person would not be strictly the ILA teacher, possibly ILA and maybe one social studies. But we do need an additional staff member in order to maintain our program. And again, it's strictly by the numbers.
And then also, Phyllis, how, so I'm interested to see how it maintains the programming, but also how this person would work with the team, team approach.
Yeah, well, the person would be a member of the team. It would meet with the other team members. It would be very integrated. The only difference would be is that this person would not only teach one subject matter, would probably teach 2, which our elementary teachers teach all the subjects, right? So we do have a unique sort of middle to upper level approach in 5th grade this year by having them discipline specific. So far, it's worked out very well. But so this person would be in 2 disciplines probably, as opposed to just one. But yeah, we can definitely mock up a couple of mock schedules for you and show you how we would space that out. But they would definitely be full integrated member of Team 5.
And would you envision the current 5th grade teachers remaining in their current roles as far as the?
I think so. I think that's been working out very well. For example, Liz from CUNIS has worked very closely with Laney Ball this year, and they're doing some amazing things. It's been her lifeline passion to teach writing, So this is for her. Just Steves, social studies. She is a social studies person, And Brian Donnelly, he could have done math or science. And most recently, he's doing very well. So it is. I think so. And certainly we get their input, and we're going to look at some of our achievement data, but I think they are well placed. And so we would then see how we would fit this person in and take on to make them a full-time integrated member of Team 5. But we do not want to, let me just say one more thing. We do not want to reduce the amount of time our children are spending in ILA and math. It's age appropriate and it's necessary. If I can put a plug in, we should probably have a little more of that in 6th grade too. That's also considered a transition year, and many of our schools also have more time, for example, for ILA. So we don't want to reduce the contact time in math and ILA.
I think I agree with Colleen that I'd like to kind of have a better understanding of the schedule, in part because I think last year we spent a lot of time on this 5+1 concept.
Yes.
Or 4+1, whatever we were calling it. And I thought a part of that justification was that because we were going through a lull in enrollment, we could maintain the team structure by providing additional assignments to those teachers.
Yes.
And so I'm surprised to hear a request for an additional teacher, because I thought we were creating a model that would save teachers as opposed to needing to add teachers.
Right. No, I totally agree. It's just that at the 5th grade level, we're getting an extra class. We're getting an extra section by the numbers. There's just no way around that. It's a much bigger class coming in. I guess it's an extra 20 or 20. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. And that's the reason. And if we can talk a little more about the +1 going forward, but it's strictly numbers. This is just a numbers-based decision for grade 5.
I think what would be helpful is to see that sort of visually and get a sort of update and assessment on how the +1 is working. And I think that'll give us the sense to really understand what's going on and provide some justification for the request.
We'll get that to you as soon as possible. Thank you. I think Jen Del Conte should speak to the SLP.
Before we do that, are there any other questions on the 5th grade teacher request? Okay, thank you. Yeah, we can pass the SLP if you want to finish your pieces, Phyllis.
Sure, I do. So the Learning Commons, this is an ask, and frankly, it's an ask to support our current library media specialist, Maria Frederick, to free her up from so many of the tasks that she does. And I'll give you a quick example. We just had a switcheroo, if you will, with our 7th graders who had used Chromebooks. Our new order came in. Maria took on the responsibility for cataloging those, the new ones, accepting the old ones from the children, spending her that kind of work, which, if we had a paraprofessional assigned to the Learning Commons, it would free her up to do the, frankly, more important work, which she's so skilled at. And I think, and I'm going to be very direct, I think so much now about our students and our need, our responsibility to give them the skills they need to vet information, right? To understand what is truth, what is fiction. We see this playing out in our nation, right? This is what she does and does very well. So the more time she has to partner with our teachers, and they literally do that. They co-teach classes, they come into the Learning Commons area, and digital citizenship, and this is her expertise, and it's invaluable. It is something that our students really benefit from. I understand it's an ask. It's a position we do not have, and that is why I am asking for this extra position, so that we frees her up from these clerical tasks that are important and that we need to function as a building, but that she would be we would be much better served by her using her expertise, in academic ways.
It generally doesn't make sense to have certified staff doing that sort of work when they could be focusing on certified work.
Exactly.
My question is it's a 1.0 ask. Is it a 1.0 need, or is it a 0.5 need? What's the level of need here?
We could certainly look at that. I mean, a 0.5 would still be helpful if we could find a person, and so that would be helpful. I mean, that is something we would certainly consider. Yeah.
And 18th, so that would be a loaded position, presumably, right? Or benefit added, right?
If it's full time, I think it does have that.
Yes.
Mhm.
Well, 18 sounds low to me, but
Right, I'm trying to figure out how many hours that
yeah,
is to get to that number.
right.
Hold on, I can look it up for you. The assumption that we have there, I just lost it. Where'd it go? We're assuming $16 an hour for 6.25 hours per day.
Can you repeat that again? $16. What was that?
$16 per hour, 6.25 hours per day.
$100 a day, 180 days.
Yep.
Any additional questions or comments on this ask? Okay. Activities and clubs.
Now, this is a reinstatement. We had our stipends cut by half for this school year. As it turns out, we haven't run any student clubs because of COVID. And we only have a yearbook club functioning now, so that we can in fact provide our 8th graders with a yearbook at the end of the year. I cannot advocate strongly enough for student activities, especially at the middle level. We have such a variety of opportunities for our students, both before school, like early morning gym, for example, and some that meet after school. There's a place for everyone. And at this age, students who are not necessarily attached to us academically academically, it's not their thing, so to speak, or they're, they haven't found themselves yet in an academic way. Even if it's a quirky club that we have 3 or 4 students involved with, it is so worth the investment. It's how our students become part of us, and it defines who we are as a middle school. So student activities are huge. Because we start late, this is a whole nother conversation, but in my previous school, our after school life was more, we had almost as many students there, and we had a late bus to take them home, which was an investment, but it really, really made our school, frankly, made it award winning, and because of the rich life we had for our students outside of the classroom. So I really would advocate very strongly that we have a rich array of offerings for our students. It connects them to our school, and it helps them develop. I'll give you one quick example. When I taught for many years in Briarcliff, I taught in the middle school and sometimes in the high school. And I would go to the high school plays, and I would see the stars on the stage, and I would say, "What? That's so and so?" From 7th grade social studies. Because no, seriously, they came alive. It was their thing. It was a way of nurturing, the whole child. So again, I speak very strongly about how having a rich activity ways to connect students to their school. It's a really worthwhile investment.
Mr. Chairman, I will add, in the previous district, we had a similar situation. We found that by providing late buses, we saw an exponential increase in student activity participation just because the kids have a way to get home. So it's one of these things, if you build it or provide it, the kids will definitely participate.
From a financial standpoint, so this is effectively doubling the amount that's allocated to this.
To this year's, but it was in our budget the prior year. So it was halved. Both our professional development and our student activities were halved in this budget. So we're asking to have them reinstated.
Okay, so if we were to see the number from this year's budget, it would be roughly 22,589. So you're asking for 45, whatever the net is. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Is that targeted to any particular activities, or is that just a restoration to the activities that were effective at the end of 2019, I guess, or 2020?
That's a good question. I want to say it's a restoration, but sometimes there are activities that are carried in the budget that are not necessarily filled, for that particular year. And so sometimes we ask to do a switch, and can we use, but roughly speaking, yes, that's pretty much what we offer. And I can't be prior to that, but maybe Darlene can, to some of the clubs that have they been longstanding or just, recent?
And where does the play fall into all this? Is that in what was carried over? And so that's not part of this request? It's part of the underlying 22?
Hard to say because we didn't really run anything, but that was part of the overall budget, would be the play stipend. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Other questions, comments? Okay.
Before I forget, earlier in the evening, both principals put up charts that compared this year to last year, including the class breakdown. Remember the grids? If we could see those, I don't mean put them up on the there they are. I was sort of hoping to get it so I could take a better look at it than just the quick flash. That's all.
And I can circulate those. That's
all I'm asking for. Yeah, great.
Yeah,
you can take it.
Okay. So,
Chris, I have a question about oh wait, excuse me. We have to do SLP, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I'll wait. I'll hold on.
Okay. Jen, do you want to say something about the SLP request at John Reed?
I can certainly talk. I do need to clarify a little bit about the SLP position. As you know, most positions in special services are driven by caseloads and caseload numbers. So there has to be a little bit of an adjustment, from the slide. So I'm going to kind of explain what that adjustment would be. I do want to remind everybody that we're still in the middle of PPT meetings, so that might be a variable right now. Currently, John Reed has 1.4 speech therapists. We have a full-time speech therapist, and then we have a speech therapist that is shared between RES, which has currently 2.6. So that therapist goes up to John Reed 2 days a week to provide services for students. Given the fact that RES special ed numbers are on the rise due to new enrollments, what we are proposing is that RES go back to 3 speech therapists and that John Reed remain at a 1.4. So the 0.4 would have to be a new hire. So right now we are sharing one person between RES and John Reed. And what we are proposing is that 0.6 position at RES go back to 3.0 and that John Reed remain at 1.4.
All right, because I see a new position at 0.2, but what you're telling me is the ask is really 0.4?
It's a 1.4, but we currently have 1.4. So we are not asking for an increase at John Reed. It would be a new body because RES, that therapist would be going back to RES.
Right. So right now we have a combined 4.0 between the two buildings. And based on the slide, I intuit that goes to 4.2, but based on what you're saying, it sounds like it goes to 4.4.
That's correct.
And Darlene is nodding heavily. So in reality, it's a $30,000 ask.
Yes, we can certainly make that correction on that slide. I'll work with Ricky to make that correction.
Any questions for Jen on the SLP? All right.
Yes, I do have just a question about the object or the account, maybe is the better word, of 111 and 112. Is that when I looked in the object, let me get the right terminology here. The
object is, for some reason we use accounts in our system, but it's an object code, so.
Yeah, so in the itemized object detail that Mr. Zachary sent around, I saw some negatives listed in that object, and I just would like as much heads up as possible if we are planning to eliminate anything. I think this slide is wonderful to show what we are adding, but if there are any plans to eliminate things, the sooner I can know about that and process a explanation to anyone who might ask me. That's very important to us as board members, I think, to be very prepared for any plans in that.
Colin, we answer your question on the Google Drive. There are no FTE eliminations. One of your questions. There are some transferring from on the original plan to SLP. It looks like a reduction in one building because it was going to another building. So it's really more of a transfer.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I think what I want to do, as it's 9 o'clock now, and we've covered everything on that slide, which are sort of the major asks and reinstatements, is take a few minutes to address this question about bridges and special education, which I think is one of the major moving pieces financially for us in this request. And I'm going to call that slide back up so that we can make sure we understand it and try to get the pulse of the board as to which direction we're leaning here so we can start putting some numbers in and see where this starts to settle. My recollection from the presentation last week is basically that we have the choice between creating a bridges program at a cost of plus or minus $100,000 or undertaking the likelihood of 6 additional outplacements at a cost of roughly $485,000. and it being the recommendation of the administration that we go forward with the Bridges program. I just want to kind of get a sense going around the board as to where they feel about that and that decision at this point. So,
Chris, may I
oh,
offer
sorry. Sure, please, Jen.
some thoughts before the board makes its final decision? I do have new and updated numbers that maybe could provide greater detail. So I don't know if you want me to go through those greater detail numbers, which might give you a more of a historical and a realistic picture of where we are right now, because the numbers that you have were the numbers at that time. We've had some PPT meetings since then. We've been able to get some new projections. So I don't know if you want me to go through those projections before, so the board has a greater sense of where we are.
I think the more current the information, the better. Do you want to put that up graphically, or do you want to talk through it? What's your?
If you want to share your screen with me, I can certainly put those. Can everyone see my screen right now?
Not yet. You should be able to share now. Let's see.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Nope.
Let me see. Let me go back here for a minute. Let me share my screen. Desktop. Okay. So I can do that. Okay. So I know that I just have a few slides here with a few numbers here because I took some notes, and I know that one of the questions that came up is we've had new kids that have moved into the Reading School District. Where did these new special ed kids go? You know, you wanted to have a sense of were they in general education classes with support, or were they are more restrictive programs? So I just took a quick peek behind the curtain. So at REF, these are where our new kids that moved into REF that had IEPs landed. You know, some landed in our general special education classes. 2 of them ended up needing additional adult support, which means we either had to hire a para or a BT to work with them. And 3 of these new entrants ended up in our basis program. This really, can everyone see this? Play from current slide. I don't know if you can see this, but this is really where we looked at the money and the settlement. So we broke this up into 3 categories. So the top is what happened in 2019-20. We had 1 basis program at RES that was staffed by 2 teachers. And at that time, we also had 4 students that were outplaced, and that was the cost. It was to outplace these students without tuition. Natalie and I met with the teachers and said, these 13 students, are they in the right placement? Because we started to see some behaviors cropping up. So in January, we split the basis program into 2 parts, basis A and basis T. Basis A is your traditional basis program. These are the students that need a functional curriculum. They're the students that need a different way and a different method of teaching. The basis T is really, let me go back. The basis T student are what I call the baby bridges kids. These are the kids that are cognitively on the ball. They're able to access the curriculum, but they have some social emotional overlay that prevents them from taking part in the general education class. So we split in 2019, we split those 13 kids at RES, 6 going into the basis A program and 7 going into the basis T program. When we did that in January, we were able to return 2 of the 4 students that we outplaced. And that is absolutely amazing because we returned the mid-year. And again, this was all done at no additional cost to the board because we had 2 certified teachers. We just reallocated how they were being used. And by doing that, this is how much money we were able to really recoup or get back because we were able to return these students. John Reed remain unchanged. We have one basis program at John Reed, and they had 6 students in the program, but 4 of them were already outplaced. This is just to give you that little historical perspective. Now, this year, again, we are only halfway through the year. So where are we? Again, we have the 2 basis program. Again, our enrollment is 8 in the traditional program, 9 in our, we want to call them baby bridges program, and we have 1 student that is outplaced. So as you can see, our outplacement numbers in RES have gone down because we've been able to have this program. And John Reed, again, has 1 basis class. So when we look into next year, what's happening is these kids that are in our basis T program are ready to leave RES and move on to John Reed. Where did they go? So this is where we came up with the creation of looking at what do we do at John Reed. So if we have 1 program, we have 1 certified teacher for basis, which means one of those, we would have outplaced 1 student who would fit the traditional basis program. The junior bridge program, this is what the cost would be for the certified staff. This is our potential enrollment that we would anticipate that we would enroll in the program. This cost over here is if we didn't have the program, this is what it would cost to send them out. This is our cost for the pair. Because we have 3 pairs already been budgeted, we will continue to have to send some student out of district just because we don't have that contingent to support them. And we currently could potentially have 2 students come back into Reading. So this is just to give you the backdrop of the numbers perspective, which leads me to what would it look like in terms of it? What would it look like if we had the bridge program versus we did not have the bridge program? And I have to just remind everyone, this is without transportation. This is just including the tuition cost. So this top part is the slide that I shared with you previously. I just put that on top for the reference. So if you're looking at the 2021-22 projected numbers for our traditional basis program, we anticipate that we will have 5 students in that program. That would be the one that we currently have. That's been a well-established program. The outplacement cost, if we have both the basic and the junior bridges, that would be the cost for the student that we continue to have to outplace. If we have a junior bridge program, we anticipate that we will have 6 students in that program. Then if we were to not have the program, we would, and outplace the student that we have slated for that program, we would be reducing it by 3 pairs. See, we currently have pairs that are assigned to the student. If we outplace them, we will not need to have those pairs. So when you look at all of these numbers, this is really what the bottom line is. This would be the potential cost to the district if we both have a bridge and basis program. That's the cost. We anticipate that. If you only have the traditional based program and we do not have a junior bridge program, that's what I anticipate the out-of-district cost will be. That is the ultimate bottom line. So I just wanted to give you that backdrop and that little bit of a historical perspective just so that you could see where the numbers and the trajectory would be.
This is really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, Jen, really. That's a.
And if you could shoot those around by email, I think we're all going to want to take another look at those numbers too. But
I can send it to you. So I can take those slides out and I can certainly send them to you.
That'd be helpful. And I think it goes without. I mean, it's worth saying again. It's the administration's recommendation that we do what we can to keep kids in the district, and that would be creating this program.
That would be my recommendation. Yes.
This is Colleen. Can I ask a question? So the delta between the programs, if we add bridges versus not adding bridges would be even more once you factor in transportation, because if we don't have the program here, we'd have to provide quite a bit of extra transportation, right? So the transportation factor makes the decision even more straightforward, because the delta will just grow, right?
Yes, we could provide transportation, because not knowing who the kids are, that's an added cost that will be there.
And the reason why I didn't put the transportation in is because there's so many variables that go into transportation, you know.
Correct.
Whether we need a bus monitor, whether we put them on a small van, can we share with another district, depending on where the program is. So, but again, you know, transportation is a big factor. So, but what is more grounded is the tuition. So that's why I elected to share with you the numbers that weren't as wild, which is the tuition numbers.
Okay. And then my only other question is, I love this idea, but I also know I live in Reading. And so I think we heard from public comment last week that Easton has bridges. Is that correct? Did I understand that correctly? Or they don't have 5th grade in their middle school. Is that I'm just wondering if we could partner with, this is my idea. If we can partner with Easton in some way to mitigate some of the cost.
That is correct. Easton did not go down to, the Easton Bridges program did not go down to 5th grade. But I would also encourage you to look at this also from a potential tuition revenue point of view, because I do know of potentially 1 or 2 students at Staples that could possibly benefit from this program. So it is possible that this could potentially be a tuition revenue, just as the converse was true. I do think that potential is there.
A clarifying question on the transportation from Colleen's question. The proposed budget has a 5.6% increase in transportation, of which 2% is contractual and the balance is special ed. Those are settled special ed transportation costs, I assume. Those don't include any sort of assumptions.
Correct. Okay. Those of known placements. We know the student, we know where they're going, we know what the cost is.
Right. So that number is only going up unless those students move out of the district, basically.
Correct. Or the programs happen to move into Reading somehow, and we don't have to take them out of town.
Any other perspectives on the Bridges program? I want to kind of get the sense of, do we need any additional detail from Jen going forward, or is the information we have sufficient to sort of start working towards a resolution on this issue?
Only if there's a downside that I'm just not seeing.
Chris, Mike, Heather, Steph?
I have a quick question, or maybe just a clarification. Jen, so do I understand that with the Bridges program, I think on the bottom of that last slide, you said, you know, the cost of the district of having that Bridges program is somewhere in the 400 range. And then if we did not have the Bridges program, the cost would be somewhere in the 600 range. And the difference between those two was, is that you predict that without the Bridges program, the junior Bridges program, there will be more outplacements.
Yes, I do anticipate that you will have more outplacements.
It's not guaranteed at this point, but that would be the reasonable expectation.
Looking at I'm trying to picture in my mind the current kids that we are projecting for this program. We really are at the teetering point with the student that we are recommending, because, you know, the student that they need something more. right now. And I'm not sure what more we can give them in-house. I mean, right now what we're doing is we're taking a Band-Aid approach. We take a creative approach, you know, having them maybe walk around the building, or we give them an additional para or BT. And a lot of these students are at a point where they're spending more time out of the classroom than in the classroom. Then what happens is when they are academically not able to keep up, they're in this vicious cycle because they're so bright. They know that they can do the work, they fall further behind. So I'm going to use the Eastern program as an example because they're finishing up their first year. What we've been able to do is to shore these kids up, make sure that they are emotionally grounded and supported. And what we're beginning to see is that we're able to release them from the RICH program, and they're spending more time in gen ed. And we would try to replicate that to John Reed, is to say, not all students may be in this program full time. Maybe, you know, they only need to be there for a half a year, or they only need to be there for 3/4 of the year. And then they can go back into the general education class with the support of the teacher and the paras and the BTs. That's really what a good special ed program does. It gives the kid the support and it releases them. And so I do anticipate that we probably will have to send the kid that we are slating out to another private state-approved school, or to another school that has that program, because they need that smaller, nurturing, supportive environment.
So Jen, just another question to that, and this is just thinking about the profile of students who you're thinking that this Junior Bridges program would be most appropriate for. As you're looking at the kind of historical trends of the kind of students that we see increases in when we look at identification categories, have you seen just over time an increase in the number of students identified related to the categories that would be most appropriately served in a Junior Bridges program?
We have most of the student in this program would probably have the classification of other health impaired, because they could have ADHD, they could be OHI, they could be OHI with ADD, or they could be ED. We've also are allowing 504 students to attend the Eastern program. And what that does is, by giving the 504 student, the support they need, that actually prevents us from having to go the route of classifying them, because we've been able to give them that environment that they need in order to be successful.
Thank you.
So we're looking at really at two groups. We've also had a couple of students that maybe have been hospitalized, and they need to come back into school. Where do they go? I mean, they may not be ready for a general education class. So, so if students have been hospitalized and then we return them, you know, this is also a good halfway point. This is also a good selling point as we talked about returning students from out of district placement. In fact, at RES, we have 1 or 2 students that are outplaced now, and they're doing great in their outplacement. Their out of district placement knows that we've got the Basis T program, which is the RES version of Junior Bridge. And they're saying, you know what, because you have this program, let's talk about maybe returning a student or 2 in the fall. So that's some of the factors that come into play. So it's allowing us to return students, and it's also allowing us to see if we could provide additional support before we send them out. There's OHI and ED, and you know, a lot of these students also have some mental health challenges that are pre-COVID. I don't want you to think just because during the COVID-19 that we're seeing an uptick in SEL needs. We're seeing that across the board, but these students have had some of these emotional challenges prior to going out. So I hope that answers your question.
Mike?
little bit more detail on, the potential for tuition sharing. How would that work? Does anybody know how that would work financially? For
Student
a
comes to
special
our
ed?
district, we have to calculate a tuition rate, generally speaking for general ed and special ed. So we'd calculate a special ed tuition rate for out-of-district students. Parent would agree to pay for that, plus sometimes additional services if there are additional services. And we send out a bill. And some districts, sometimes you allow a payment plan, sometimes you do it 60-40. It's sort of at the board's discretion. And if payments aren't received in time, then student is removed from program.
That's interesting. I thought you were saying that the other district would be paying tuition, not the parent. That's
Well,
interesting.
the other district pays it, but sometimes, like, remember, it's a two-way street. So generally it's the other district, but sometimes parents can make a unilateral decision and say, I want my child in that program.
Okay, right. Okay.
But the way it's normally works, it comes from the other district.
Yes, we get a check from the other district. And
Yeah.
so we'll get a check. We'll send out an invoice to the district and says, Tom Jones is here. Here's the tuition we agreed upon. Please send us the check. And it's usually made in 2 payments per year.
And Mike, to that point, if that were something that we were going to do through partnerships with other districts, particularly if we're talking about districts beyond Easton, right? But if we're looking at other districts, we could set our tuition for, sort of whatever we think is fair and comparable to other programs, it ends up being has the potential to be a really nice revenue source that beyond providing the additional supports in the building and just within the district, it just becomes sort of another perk to having that as an option. And part of the reason why I asked Jen about the sort of trend data with students who would fit this profile is because I've seen that this same need continue to grow in other districts. I think that as a district, we are being more responsive to putting this program in place than I've seen in other districts. So there could be an opportunity there. But I think that I could see this being a programmatic need for us in the future. And so then it becomes a question of, if we're heading in this direction, is now a good time to pull the trigger, or do we delay it? And then, to Clarence's point at the last meeting, how much cost could we avoid by moving sooner rather than delaying and potentially spending more money in out-of-district placements? I also just want to say, I think that when we're considering out-of-district placements and we're thinking about, we know that that's tough on students and tough on families because it becomes another transition. And so whereas we're looking at this as an option for students to move in and out of flexibly, if we don't have that in-district program and we're sending them out for an out-of-district placement, we would, I think that we would be more reluctant to kind of move them back and forth, because those would then be significant transitions rather than, just being able to transition very smoothly. And so again, from a cost standpoint, you could see how that would then make it, we'd end up paying that out of district placement longer, because we wouldn't want to inadvertently transition a student back too soon.
I also want to point out that some of the kids I mentioned in our Basis T program that we've been able to develop an RES that we hope that will transition to John Reed. Many of these kids, their ability is average to exceptional. We have some that with the right supports, they actually, some of them do meet the criteria of having a dual exceptionality. So my question then becomes is, we're potentially sending out some of our brightest kids because they have the emotional overlay that we are unable to support right now. So we can give them that emotional support I mean, I think they can do absolute wonders, and they are doing absolute wonders at RES. And I should like to be able to make sure that we can continue to support them when they move up to the next level. And then we know that Barlow has the service of bridge. So this looks at, when you're looking at bridges, if you want to call it that, what you're really doing is you're building a pre-K to 12 continuum where a parent don't have to transition in and out as they go through pre-K through 12 in the tri-district model.
Yeah. Hey, so Jen, let's say we did develop the Junior Bridges program and there was a student, the exact type of student that we want to be servicing here in the district, and they're outside of the district, in an outplacement situation at that moment. How does that work? What's the mechanism that gets that student back? Is it just the parent discovering that we now have the capability and asking to come back? Does the district, say, hey, listen, I know you're out because we didn't have it before, but we've got it now, so you have to come back? How does that work?
It's really what I call a collaborative process. What often happens is when we send kids out of district, they grow to love and trust the providers that are working with them in their out of district placements. So my first conversation is always with the out of district staff, and every conversation that Jen Hankel and I do when we do our PPT meeting, we always say when we send kids out, we need to talk about a reentry plan. We want our students to come back, so we always have that conversation with them. Are they ready to return? If they're not ready to return, what do they need to have in place in order to return? So that's why I always start the conversations with the clinicians or with the out-of-district providers. And that's exactly what happened in the case that we're looking to potentially return a student to Reading. They know that we've got this program. And when they actually reached out to me and said, your kid is a rock star in our program, doing great. If you have a small program within the building, that would be a great starting place for him before they go off into the gen ed setting. So it is a process. So, and it is something that often will take, I would say, a good 6 to 8 months of having those conversations with the parents. Parents like to come and visit the program. So if we have a program, we could say, here's the teacher, here's the staff, here's the environment, here's what it looks like. In fact, when we placed a Reading student in the program, that's exactly what we did. We invited the parents to meet with the teacher, and the way we pitched it to them was, you're going to a sister district. All these kids end up at Joe Barlow High School, so he'll be back with his community. But again, the rub is that you will be able to offer it to fifth graders, and there aren't too many programs in Fairfield County that go down to the elementary level to support the social and emotional needs in other public schools.
That's a question I wanted to sort of drill into, which is what advantages or disadvantages do we have by having this fifth grade in the middle school model? How does that impact your thinking around all of this?
You mean what, having the fifth graders? What impact?
I mean the sense that we're going to incur the cost of building out a program at the middle school, in part to accommodate fifth graders who, in other circumstances, might still be in the basis A or T program that exists at RES because of the structure.
Yes, so we do have a pipeline from RES. That's definitely one. I mean, we can go back a couple of years and stretch it out, but we also have kids at John Reed Middle School right now that I know that I've been in conversation with Darlene, and Darlene and I always have a conversation. We have a handful of kids just saying, what are we going to do for these kids? So those kids have already been factored into my projected numbers for next year. And so we're saying, we really can't support these kids. And now what's happening on the eastern side is that this program has to be small in order to be accessible. We probably have to cap it around 8 students because the most therapeutic programs are on the small side. Easton is already probably approaching capacity. Believe it or not, each program we started this year, they're beginning to approach capacity. but they also have to, their first priority has to be to the student of Easton, just as your priority has to be to the student of Reading. So when Easton reaches capacity, then what do we do?
I guess I'm wondering how the staffing of the two programs across RES and John Reed would be different if our fifth grade was all at RES.
How would the staffing be different in, at John Reed?
Question.
Right, like between the way that the base, because assuming that all of fifth grade were at RES, then the basis A and T programs would serve K through 5. And then the junior bridges would only be 6, 7, 8, just like it is in Easton. And it sounds to me like we wouldn't have the same level of need if our middle school was only 3 grade levels instead of 4.
But you would be denying one group the opportunity to be with their peers. So let's say, for example,
I'm saying if we were in a more conventional setting where RES was K5, how would that be different? And because what I'm hearing or what I'm intuiting is that we are incurring additional costs associated with these programs in part because of the way we've structured our grade levels.
yeah. So if Reading Elementary would pre-K to 5, I probably would then have to make the junior bridges recommendation for Reading the following year, not next year, but the year after.
Based on a cohort of students that's currently in 4th grade that would just be delayed a year in arriving at the middle school.
In my mind, the John Reed kids that we've slated in there are either in 7th or 8th grade now. So the 8th graders should be moving on to Bala. We probably would have to outplace, or Darlene and I would have to get super creative to really support those students. And then the following year, you would have a larger cohort of kids moving up from RES to John Reed.
And has been talking about that one cohort of kids, but we also have some 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, other students that we're saying, what's the best place for them? And it would be a Bridges program.
Right, they would slide in with that cohort of kids that's coming in. When it comes to out-of-district students coming to our program, does the existence of 5th grade at the middle school make the Junior Bridges program more or less attractive in that respect? Like if you're dealing with a student like from Westport or wherever it is that we'd like to have them come here, is it more or less likely that they'll come for a 5-8 program than they would if it were a 6-8 program?
I think that let's take Westport, for instance. I'm not sure how Westport Middle School is set up, but the argument that we could easily make is if we had a 5th grader from Westport go to John Reed, that would be less transition for them because they would spend 4 years in the building, whereas in a traditional middle school, they would only spend 3 years. So this would actually reduce the number of transitions that they would have to make.
I'm thinking about it as a marketing opportunity.
Yeah. I get that sense.
I also think it's really important what Jen said. I love this conversation. I think it's really a very interesting opportunity for us, but also that the program has to remain small and that we have to prioritize Reading students. So I love the idea that it might be a tuition revenue stream, but it also might be limited in the sense that we have to keep the program, we can't get too excited, I guess, about the revenue stream if we have to keep the program small, is what I'm pointing out.
Colleen, there's a natural limitation there. I did this in Stratford. We built 3 programs. There's always a physical plant limitation. You need to have classrooms and space for these, and there's not an unlimited supply of that. So that once you run out of chairs, it's sort of, there's a natural inhibitor restrictor there.
I think if you're looking at physical space, I think that Darlene, Phyllis, and I can put our heads together and find just the perfect spot for this program. In fact, I have my eye on a couple of classrooms. So, I think that physically the building can accommodate them, but I think Darlene and Phyllis could probably speak more to that piece.
My thought is that the Bridges concept is likely to evolve over time so that we can sit here and say, well, we can only take 6 or we can only take 8 or we don't have the space or this and that and the other thing. But I wonder what kind of conversation we'll be having 5 years from now when this kind of Bridges has evolved or morphed into something else, bridges, turbo bridges, something, whatever it is. So I'm not sure that we want to limit ourselves, that, we're either taking this step on the journey and we don't know exactly where the journey is going to take us, or we're not. And I think I'm all for it, but just.
I think what we have to also look at is the trend. We're seeing more and more students are exposed to trauma. We're seeing a significant uptick on social and emotional needs of students. So this is not an issue that's going to go away so quickly. I mean, sadly, I'm seeing more and more younger kids be hospitalized. I mean, when I first started teaching, it was mostly high school students that were hospitalized, and now we're seeing younger and younger students that are being hospitalized. We're also seeing younger and younger students being medicated, which and they're on heavy duty medication. So this is not an issue that's new to schools, and I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. And that's where a program like this can really support those kids. So this is not a one-shot deal, and you're right, it could evolve and change over time, but I think the core issue of a student that has been exposed to trauma is going to be with us for a while, just because we have to catch up with what those needs are.
We still don't know what the results of COVID isolation is going to be, or how we're going to handle kids coming out of that over the next 2 years. So.
And we specifically looked at kids that we were very conscious to say that these kids would need these support regardless of COVID. So we know that these kids have a history of challenges. So that's the group of kids that we've identified as. We just wanted to make sure that this just wasn't because they aren't able to complete their work or because they're exposed to a new way of teaching and learning. These are the kids that we know historically by reviewing their files that, they've had challenges all along.
So with respect to this program, does anybody feel that it is not a good idea to pursue it? It sounds to me like all the comments have been favorable, all the questions have been about upside, and I haven't heard any particular drawbacks. Any board members feeling gun shy about moving forward with this approach? Because what I'd like to do is start moving in the direction of building out a budget that incorporates this more firmly so that we can have a better idea of where we're headed.
I think that's the right path.
Okay.
I agree. The only thing that I wonder about the point that you brought up about the 5th grade, Chris, and that is maybe, I think in the middle of a budget season is probably not the best time to try to think about restructuring everything. But it is a good point, and especially if we were going into the open choice conversation also.
And if we're having a conversation about adding a 5th grade teacher.
Yep.
Heather, I thought it was a very effective counter to the concern. When you have a 5th to 8th school, you have less transition for somebody that comes in, during the 5th grade. I think you can view that both ways.
Yep.
And with the population of the schools, almost 500 in one, low 3s in the other. I think we're a little bit stuck right now.
So if there's no concern with respect to the program, I'm going to ask that Rydell, Clarence, and Jen move forward with projecting in that additional staff member and make those expectations as we sort of rework the budget going forward, as we sort of crystallize where that's going to all land. Because I know that was a number that needs to be plugged in one way or the other. I think we should plug it in that way.
Thank you.
Okay. So mindful of the hour, what I'd like to do is go around as one last task for tonight with respect to identifying any large issues that you feel like we haven't identified in the budget that you'd like to hear more about or are concerned about at this point. Basically to try to generate an issues list that we could spend the next couple of meetings working through. And obviously, if you come up with anything in the next week or two that is similarly important, you can email it in or use our form to fill it in, and we can work through that. But just want to make sure we have identified all the issues that are concerning to board members that would require additional information. And what I started doing was creating my own list before this meeting that we can compile cumulatively to make sure we understand where basically the question marks are and where the pressure points are. I think we've more or less resolved the bridges question tonight. The health insurance allocation we're going to talk about on January 26th, and then we're going to have to revisit in February. Staffing, these are the staffing requests based on the presentation, and we've sort of talked through all of those tonight with respect to a little bit more context as to what those are, but decisions left to be made with respect to each of them. There are requests in the budget for equipment, professional development, and extracurriculars that are adjustments over current year that we'll probably want some additional context on. I think we have it on the extracurriculars, but we'll need to make decisions on each of these points. Are there other issues, particularly those that require additional administration input or presentations that board members are concerned about at this stage of the process? And I'll just go around. Heather?
No, that covers what was on my mind.
Colleen?
I'm sorry, I was reading what I had written as you were talking. So when you just said professional development, does that include conferences?
I would include in professional development. I would include conferences. I would include the request with respect to DEI, PD. Okay. All of that will be encompassed in that topic area, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, and then my other question is, so I ask a lot of questions, obviously, and so I'm just, where do I look for the answers? So I put my questions into the form.
They're in the form, Colleen.
So what we're going to do is you can plug the questions into the form, and I know Clarence has already been answering some of them. And what I will do, because we're trying to make this as FOI clean as possible, we don't want to have an online meeting by accident. So access to the answers is restricted. And we're going to circulate a one-way email memorandum with those answers on regular intervals and include those responses, the questions and responses, in board materials for future meetings so that everybody knows what the questions are and everybody knows what the answers are, and there's no hiding. So my expectation is on a weekly basis at this point, more or less, we'll take a snapshot of where those questions and answers are and circulate them to the board so everyone knows what's going on.
Okay, so and then under equipment requests, is the impact of the phones, I'm not even 100% sure how we left things off with the phones, but you know, I'm looking at leases, you know, the object about leases.
The phones are installed.
The phones are installed and paid for by the town.
Okay.
I think the equipment requests, in my mind, from the budget presentation are primarily the RES library computers, and I think there were a couple other smaller items in there.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I may be mixing up districts, but I think there are some requests for replacing of smart boards or white boards, but I may be mixing up districts, but I recall some aging out or replacement of some smart board type things.
Natalie is saying yes. So. Okay.
Is there, I guess we don't know, but I was thinking that if there was going to be any additional funding for COVID, we would have no way of knowing that might be something that we could.
Well, it's funny that you say that. We just got notification today that there's going to be some additional funding. So okay. The answer to your question is yes. Will we get a good lion's share of it? Probably not, but we might get something out of it.
It's about $490 million to the state that will be allocated to districts based on their Title I allocations, which ours is not very high in Reading. So there'll be some, but we'll find out some additional information about that within the next week or so.
Colleen, any other issues to add or areas that we need to resolve? Colleen?
Sorry, I was muted. Talking to myself over here. No, that looks like a pretty comprehensive list there. If something else comes up, I'm sure I'll let you know.
Alan, I don't know if
Mike?
you heard me, but your answers to most of your questions are already on the document. So if you want to see it prior to Chris consolidating it, it's there.
Okay, great.
She doesn't have access because we're trying to avoid an
All right,
online
I'm
meeting.
sorry. I assumed you did since they
I'll
were your
have to wait.
questions.
Mike?
Yeah, two things. One is when we talk about professional development going forward, I want to make sure that we talk about two things together. What we always talk about with professional development, bringing people in for courses, sending people out of district for a class, conferences, whatnot. But I don't want to forget about tuition reimbursement, because that's professional development too. So sometimes we look at bucket A, the traditional, professional development, and as it got whittled down, we'd say we're not doing any professional development, and meanwhile we're spending a lot of money over on tuition reimbursement. That's professional development too. So I'd like to see those two numbers close by each other when we have the conversation. The second thing is, I was just wondering, I remember at the end of budget season, or maybe it was even after budget season, I think it was actually, when we added, a whole lot of things that we needed to do to related to COVID, right? And we said, let's find a spot, we'll find a way to pay for it. And I think we've done well as far as that goes, because we haven't been in school as much, right? But I was just wondering what we're predicting for COVID expenses for, this year. Is it going to be the same sort of thing, or are you predicting a decrease? Like
you made funding for COVID mitigation for next fiscal year.
Funding that's coming from the outside.
No, I'm right. I mean, you're saying within the budget proposal, how much is allocated towards COVID mitigation?
Yeah, exactly.
My assumption, I think I'm assuming that we are assuming that come September of 2021, we are sort of out of the clear. We're assuming like full normal return to education. So we're being eternally optimistic here.
Good.
Right. And by the time that we adopt this budget or we have our public hearing, God willing, the staff is all vaccinated too.
Amen.
So
We are
the only-
trying to get there.
The only thing I would add to that is that you heard Natalie make a case for a smaller class size. So while we may be at the end of the health scare, we do want to be responsive to the needs of our students next year.
I'm going to add COVID impacts to the list because I think that's a good point. The extent to which we need to be conscious of the effects on students and having to meet them where they are in the next year is a bit of an unknown, but it's something that we have to expect.
There's always the question of the additional counselor that we kicked the can on a bunch of times.
The elementary school counselor?
Stephanie, when you just said Natalie was looking for a smaller class size in relation to the COVID conversation, you were saying that because of the thought that there's going to need to be some catch up?
I want to be prepared for that as a possibility. I think we have been pleasantly surprised at how responsive our students have been to the various learning models this year, and so proud of our teachers for their excellent work to engage students in different learning models. But it's a very different type of learning experience, and we do want to be prepared for the possibility that there will be additional interventions that are needed, a greater focus on social and emotional learning. We just don't know. We're almost at the halfway point of the year, and I just think it's too early in the year to say, we're going to be in the clear.
Okay.
Chris,
Anything else on you? I'm sorry, go ahead, Darling.
on staffing, the speech and language is not on there, I don't think.
Yep, you're right. Thank you. Mike, were you saying you're all good otherwise?
All good. Thanks.
Okay. Steph lost her internet connection, and John?
Yes, Mr. Zachary.
Oh, she's back. Sorry, Steph?
Yeah, I'm back. I've been going through the list and I have been making notes about what's jumped out at me, but I think I'll just email. So everything you have up there looks good, but I have some questions about just differences over last year.
Okay.
And
but
I
no,
will submit those.
No large rock issues like this. Okay.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Okay.
John?
Yeah, I was just saying that for Mr. Zachary's benefit, I'm a property and casualty insurance agent, and I looked at the both the property and liability being flat year over year, and I was obviously pleased to see that. I'm just wondering if that's real from Kerma yet, or if that's just an estimate at this point in time. What I see on a daily basis is not flat.
It's a plug until we hear back from Kerma, because as you can, like healthcare, all that sort of analysis, people are pulling in their year-end analysis to prepare projections for next year. We're 14 days into January, so we're just sort of waiting. So you got to have a number there, so we flatline healthcare and other things like that until we get some projections.
Okay, thanks.
So let's see. I'm going to add P and C onto this just to make sure that it's clear that we're keeping an eye on the fact that insurance is going to move one way or the other. Anything else, John?
No, thank you.
Chris?
Yeah. I think a lot of people are going to want to learn more about the proposed Director of Digital Learning at Central Office. And, you know, one of the things that occurred to me when we heard about it the last time was to what extent does that take the place of what's already there in the buildings? Or is this just another person to head up what's already there and thus a entirely additional cost? If you see what I'm saying.
Yep.
And you know, the added trick to this is that you're going to need buy-in by more boards than just us. So I think understanding that better, including any, you know, current or future savings that would come out of it, and understanding the costs, because I'm seeing some numbers here that actually Clarence had sent me on the side that I need to understand a little bit better as to what the, you know, what the all-in cost of such a position would be. So that would, you just added it to the list.
And it would be my expectation that when we meet on the 26th as three boards, that Rydell and the administration will be prepared to address that topic more substantially.
Right. I guess I'll throw in that there's probably some big maintenance costs, additional maintenance costs that I remember seeing from before, like lawn care, lawn manicuring, whatever you want to call it. That, you know, just the magnitude of the costs was kind of like, geez, really? Did we grow that much more grass? So I
think that the lawn maintenance issue is something that's in part of an ongoing conversation with the town, and my expectation is that it's going to move over to their jurisdiction. I don't know if Clarence has any updates from his conversations with the town recently, but that seems to be the direction that's moving. If you recall from the spring, we had to retain a contractor to handle the grass because of complications in that circumstance. But
okay. Well, just if there are any big numbers moving around in the, you know, maintenance category, which I haven't had a chance to go through and question those, and I can put those on the spreadsheet. But
Clarence, are you going to jump in?
We don't, Chris, the list I provided you were all the things that had significant changes, you know, $2,000 or $3,000 or more. And the lawn care was obviously one because it's significant change because it wasn't there the year before. So that it's going to be significant because it's, you know, and one, it's from 0 to 20,000.
It went from 0.
It's going to pop off the screen just because the starting point. So just Chris, to your point, I went through as sort of being a new person, I went through and sort of flagged everything that had a significant either percentage increase or dollar increase. And that's why I created that sort of sheet. I created it for Rydell and I shared it for you.
That's this.
Yes, exactly. So that sort of, to me, those would be the points where from my experience, boards will be asking questions about. So I gave Rydell this sort of guide to figure out so we know what the explanation of. For instance, like I look at world language, there's a lot of increases in world language between software and other stuff. And I want to make sure that's thematically what we want to do versus just that the world language department decided they wanted that. There's all these sort of things so we can have a rationale behind it. So to Chris Parker's point.
Well, then you've already got my list.
Yeah, so that's the list I created for Rydell, the things I thought the board would want to talk about. And Chris Parks, you don't mind sharing the rest of the board. That sort of gives you whether it's new, reinstated, or just a general increase. So it's my sort of roadmap to areas that I thought you guys might focus on.
Yeah, I was surprised you didn't send it to everybody just because I asked.
You requested it, and when I got it to Chris, I figured you just would disseminate from there.
Okay.
Just so everyone knows, the things on this list here, we were talking about an overall increase. I think it was almost 1.2. This represents $1 million of that 1.2. So just this list alone, that's why I said you could focus in and just sort of, and obviously it excludes the bridges conversation, but this is really sort of the heart of the changes from this year to next year. With the tuition private school being the largest driver there.
You know what, that prompts something else for the issues list, which is the preschool teacher request. I don't think was on the slide we walked through today, but I do think we want to talk about the ask for additional preschool teacher and how that factors into our expectations for enrollment and things.
I don't know if it was a teacher, but it was an increase. So we can clarify that, and I want to try to do that offline, but it wasn't an additional FTE request. There's an issue regards tuition. The increase is based on because the offset from tuition.
Okay. All right. So everybody has been heard on any issues they have. We can start working on how to move forward with our February discussion. I think that we have some takeaways for areas we'll need some help from the administration, but otherwise I think we have a pretty good handle on what the major moving pieces are at this point. And as you go through the details of the budget and as the more of the budget materials become available, keep using the Google form to get more detailed questions answered, and we can kind of keep the flow of information going back and forth to get where we need to go on this. Any other closing questions or comments on the budget topic for tonight?
I have a question about these documents that we've seen. Are they available that the public can access? Or do I have to take screenshots of everything and upload it to the Facebook page?
I will work with you offline to figure out how to get all the documents.
Yeah, and before you do the itemized budget, as I acknowledge there's an error there, so we want to get that corrected before you put it out into the public domain.
Yep.
It would be great if I could just link to it and not have to do.
I can probably create a link and have it send it to you, and then you can just access it from there.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments on the budget for tonight? All right. If there are not, we will move on to item 5 of the agenda, which is public comment. Anyone who is still hanging in there with us, you can raise your hand in the participants window or on the reactions button now. Kristen Anstedt.
Hi, Chris. Thank you. Kristen Anstedt, 60 Wordleberry Road. As always, I want to thank you guys for your time. Budget season is always so much fun to It's so much work. Two quick things. One is the Junior Bridges program. As a community member, I think it is such a valuable thing for our district to have, to try to keep these children that need more within their community. I think to be able to have them transition as much as possible from a general education classroom into a room where they get the support that they need and then back. I think having them amongst their community with their peers is such a valuable thing. So I really appreciate the fact that everybody on the board seemed to support that, because I think as a parent in the community, I just think that those children deserve to, as much as possible, just stay within their own community and with their peers while they're getting the support they need. Second is near and dear to my heart, as everybody probably already knows, is gifted and talented. And during the budget season, it always seems to be one of the programs that potentially comes on the chopping block. And I just want to once again put in my hope and plea that it will be kept again for our children. My son now is in the 5th grade and he's over at JRMS, where, as we all know, there is not a gifted and talented program. And I will say that it has been it's been a bit rocky for him. And it's something that I doubt we're going to be able to probably get back over at JRMS. But I think if we would be doing our gifted children and our advanced learners a huge disservice if we also then removed it from RES and remove that additional support. Matt Farina is a wonderful teacher and he was very beloved by my son. So again, I please, I hope that we continue to think about those children that require more, that don't fall within the typical kind of 80% and need that extra to really thrive and be happy and successful learners. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Meredith.
Hi, Meredith Ferris, 26 Ledgewood. I just want to thank the board tonight for just everything that you're doing. And, what I'm hearing is that you're being pretty accepting of the Bridges program. I think it's really important that we keep our kids in the community. I think that, although the Easton program is wonderful, it's nice that the kids can be with their own peers. And although, they are super bright kids in this program, they do need that nurturing environment. And I think that it's just super important that you guys are all on board with this, and I really appreciate it. And, I think our kids just deserve it. I also just want to mention about the arts programs that hopefully can get reinstated. I think Phyllis talked about it earlier. They're just so important. I have an art degree and I loved music growing up, and I was in school plays, and it just really helped me come out of my shell. And I think especially with everything going on with the pandemic, and hopefully next year it'll be a little bit different and sort of back to normal, I guess, hopefully. It's just, it'll be somewhere these kids can go and maybe not feel bad about themselves or express themselves in certain ways. So I'm hoping that we can just reinstate some of that. That would be awesome. But that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Meredith. Carolyn?
Hey, Carolyn Baker, Indian Hill Road. I'll echo the thanks. I also echo what Kristen Anstedt had to say about the accelerated learning programs, and hopefully we can find some creative ways to further develop that into JRMS, even if it comes down to Matt Farina splitting some of his time with those kids in 5th grade. I think it's going to be a tough transition for some of the 4th graders this year. And then the third thing I would say is, I am very supportive of the custodial asks of the school. I think that's more important than ever. I think as we go into next year, I don't think that the COVID situation is going to be as great as people think it is by September. So, just lobbing some support in for that, because I think it's really important that we have adequate custodial staff in our schools.
Thank you, Carolyn. Any other public comment? Seeing none, board member comment.
Chris, can I just say thank you to everyone who provided data today. There is, I really appreciate this team is on either brand new or on the newish side. And I just appreciate with every layer of questioning that we have, you guys show us more data. And that's each year it's more and more and more. And I really appreciate the level of transparency, and it just feels so forthcoming. And it's very reassuring that we know what you know. And I really appreciate the effort that takes.
Thank you, Colleen. Any other board member comment? If there's not, we'll look for a motion to adjourn. Mike, is there a second? Heather, very excitedly. If there is no objection, and I hear no objection,